I don't think that's a fair characterization. Hitler was probably.
Well, didn't Sudeland. That's essentially what they're claiming, that first after World War, he's invading.
Yeah, it's got some old school overtones to it, that's for sure. I got a couple videos lined up so that can kind of get your juices flowing on Ukraine. So that was my plan, to talk about Ukraine a little bit more. So I just wanted to see what you guys knew about it first. Any other comments of what you know?
I haven't even heard about it.
You haven't even heard about it? How many people haven't heard about it? That's a good question.
Pretty crazy.
Okay. It's out there, but you know that's the way it works. If you don't watch the news, or I mean, you can stay insulated from this stuff. I've done that a lot. Rational ignorance is awesome.
If you've seen the movie Red Dawn,
Rational ignorance rocks. So you don't have to. That's why I thought it'd be kind of fun to bring about. All right, what am I trying to do here? Videos.
Well, been on certain
CNN and Fox.
Yeah, all the major. In fact, the thing that I've got videos from is from the CBS Morning Show this morning, I think it was. But over the weekend, I watched the news blurb on it.
Asked the soldiers if they were from Russia, and all of them ignored him. Except this little 18-year-old kid, and he turned around and was like, "Yeah, I'm from Russia." And then all the soldiers turned around and stared at him. It was hilarious. You just blew our cover.
All right, so let's watch this. This is just 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
CBS News senior security contributor Mike Morell is with us. He is a former deputy director of the CIA. Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
We want to talk about Putin and what he's up to, but first, what are the larger risks at stake in this crisis?
So I think the real risk here is that this war could spread. Eastern Ukraine is largely Russian-speaking, and that could give Putin a reason to move into eastern Ukraine and have a larger war between Ukraine and Russia.
And so why is Putin doing this? What's he up to?
I think there's two reasons. One is it has been a long time Russian foreign policy in general, and Putin's desire in particular to establish control, complete control over all of those states that used to be part of the former Soviet Union. And it is also his strong desire to undermine the United States at any chance he can. So moving into Crimea,
If you do the automatic thing, it does not go to. Yeah, it stays on Explore. Let's get this thing on.
is a very powerful message not only to Ukraine, but to all of those countries of the former Soviet Union. Don't mess with.
Minutes 50 or so. Another masterful marketing thing by Google.
CBS News senior security contributor Mike Morell is with us. He is a former
In Russian foreign policy in general, and Putin's desire in particular to establish control, complete control over all of those states that used to be part of the former Soviet Union. And it is also his strong desire to undermine the United States at any chance he can. So moving into Crimea sends a very powerful message not only to Ukraine, but to all of those countries of the former Soviet Union. Don't mess with me. And to do it a day after the president tells him not to gives the United States a black eye.
Mike, Charlie and I have been talking about how fascinating this is, exactly what Putin is. I know you agree about what he's doing. Let's talk about U.S. options. What options we have. You heard the Secretary of State say repeatedly yesterday, we're going to make it hurt. But really, economic sanctions, are we prepared to go all the way?
So the things that we've done already are pretty weak, and Putin will see them as weak. Military action is not an option for obvious reasons. The only real option is economic sanctions. That could bite the Russians. But do we really want to get into an economic war with Russia, with a country that produces the second most oil in the world, and a country that produces the second largest amount of natural gas in the world? He can cause real problems.
Yes.
The other question is, what's at stake for President Obama? New York Times today, the Russian occupation of Crimea has challenged Mr. Obama, as has no other international crisis. At its heart, the advice seemed to pose the same question. Is Mr. Obama tough enough to take on the former KGB colonel in the Kremlin?
The only thing that Vladimir Putin understands is tough. And there has to be a tough response for Putin to pay attention.
But the president's credibility is at stake.
I think so.
All right. Mike Morell, thank you.
The question is, what's at stake?
He can cause just amount of natural gas. gas in the world. It's the second most oil in the world, and a country that
Okay. So they mentioned economic sanctions. We've talked about that. What is that?
Quotas, tariffs, increased
restrictions placed on Russia.
Okay, so some sort of thing that keeps trade. Now, what does that do to the United States?
It hurts us.
It hurts us, right? So don't forget that. That doesn't get brought up in these videos very much, but something that we're learning in class. Free trade, good for who? One guy and not the other, or both? So free trade works for both. So when we put sanctions on Russia, we're kind of hurting ourselves too. It's not a one-way street.
He kind of hinted at it whenever he said that they're the second biggest provider of oil.
Yeah, right. He did hint at it with sanctions.
So.
Yep.
That's a problem, by the way.
Yeah, that's not a good.
That's a big problem. For
Yeah,
us.
there's a lot of world oil though, but yeah, they're a player. Might help us get more out of our grounds for that matter. But yeah, that's the sanctions that they're thinking about. So this map is kind of distorted because they did something. Ukraine doesn't look quite this big, but because Russia swarms the whole thing. So Russia's sitting all over here. I thought there was a better map. There might be a different map on the next video we're going to show. So Crimea is this little guy that kind of stands alone, and so they have occupied that.
Well,
That is what's going on, and that is not too cool from an international standpoint. WTO, all these international organizations, the United Nations that we've talked about in class, they wouldn't think that's too cool that we go in and take over and occupy aggressively part of a nation like that.
Well, they're in Kiev too, which is the capital of Ukraine.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't think they're up there in the same way they're down here.
Oh
Yeah, I think there's connections though. So the president, to give you a little more background here before we jump into the next video, what's his name? Yanukovych, I think. He got ousted last week or the week before, and he actually kind of fled the country. So there was a bit of I'm losing the word now, revolt against the current regime. He's been somewhat in bed with Putin. So there was kind of this alliance of cronyism type of style where you're my buddy, I'm your buddy, let's help each other out type of thing. The Ukraine economy hasn't been going so hot, and I think there's a large faction of the Ukraine's pretty split. I mean, they're kind of on a civil war type of status where do we go back to old school Russia way of thinking, or do we stay a little more free market? And so there's kind of these two groups that are out there. Well, again, he thought his life was threatened, so he fled the country, and they went through a democratic process, elected a new person into the position that is still in its infancy of how they're going to get started. The guy who got booted thinks, hey, this is still my country, I want to come back and do it, and this isn't right. And so that's kind of where we're at. It's pretty serious at a big time global level now is where this thing's headed.
Riots been going on for a while.
Yeah, people have gone through the capital in Kiev, and so let's watch one more video with that background, and then we can talk a little more. This is it's from the morning show, but it's blurbs of John Kerry, who I listen to Sunday morning when I wanted to talk.
Secretary of State John Kerry will travel to Ukraine tonight. Kerry told Bob Schieffer on Face the Nation that Russia has committed, in his words, an incredible act of aggression.
Yeah, I went right back to. I don't even know if it's worth changing the preferences on this so that what do I have to do? Choose Chrome as my preferred browser or something?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if it'll stick with the way these.
Secretary of State John Kerry will travel to Ukraine tonight. Kerry told Bob Schieffer on Face the Nation that Russia has committed, in his words, an incredible act of aggression.
You just don't, in the 21st century, behave in 19th century fashion by invading another country on completely trumped-up pretexts. I think Russia needs to think very carefully about the choice that it's making, and there are visa bans, there are asset freezes, there's isolation with respect to trade and investment. American businesses may well want to start thinking twice about whether they want to do business with a country that behaves like this. These are serious implications.
And President Obama spoke with other world leaders yesterday. Major Garrett is at the White House, where officials say they're prepared to shut out Russia. Major, good morning.
Well, good morning, Nora and Charlie. The economic moves that Secretary of State Kerry just outlined are very real, and the White House is hoping that Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, will back down at least slightly and take the offer now on the table of international observers and international monitors in Crimea instead of risking long-term economic isolation. Now, the fact is that everything the United States has done so far to punish Russia, canceling high-level talks on trade and energy expansion, canceling preparations for a G8 summit in Sochi, Russia, are temporary and can be easily reversed. But if the United States and its Western allies hit Russia with economic sanctions or deny Moscow access to global financial networks and key international bank accounts, the damage to the Russian economy could be long-lasting, and it could put U.S.-Russian relations in the deepest, most confrontational stance that they've been in the entire Obama presidency. Now, the administration believes that Putin has overplayed his hand and will not fire shots in Crimea and not move his Russian forces into less friendly parts of Ukraine. With Canada, Great Britain, France, and Germany all against Russia, Moscow's own status in the G8 is also in jeopardy. Now, these nations are also preparing, along with the United States, an economic package to rescue this transitional and fragile government in Ukraine itself. The United States doesn't need or want to punish Russia necessarily for this violation of international law. It just wants Moscow to back off and ease the tensions. But right now, as Elizabeth Palmer just said, Russian forces are there in Crimea. They are a reality. And until they move out, this is going to be a confrontation between those Russian forces on the ground and the implied threat of economic sanctions from the West. Nora, Charlie?
Major, thank you.
Okay.
Now, these nations are also preparing, along with the United States, an economic package to rescue this transitional and fragile government in Ukraine.
Who's ready for World War III? Alright. Just thought I'd freeze it on the map. That gives a little bit better perspective of what they're doing. So, what do you think? What do you think about strategy? We talked a little bit in here about game theory. Did you see that coming out?
I think Putin's playing the odds that the West is going to back down.
And so we've got the U.S. making threats.
That's all we ever do. Sorry, I didn't say that loud.
And that's part of what they're calling to the carpet here if they think he's tough. So this gets into a game theory type environment, right?
Putin used the Olympic platform, I think, to his advantage, and then because what was Sochi was over 4 days ago or whatever.
Yeah, isn't that amazing that we just
And
came out of
They
there?
were saying that there's another in like 2 months or something. There's something else big that's going on in Sochi. I can't remember what it was. They were talking about it, but Obama was like threatening to not go there or keep our athletes from going or something.
Oh, they probably had intelligence that this was gonna.
So
I hadn't heard even murmurings.
I was just watching this video on YouTube of this guy that was like parked in a street in Ukraine, and it looked like there was this Russian helicopter just flying over his, and there was troops everywhere. I was like, that'd be pretty scary if that happened here. But
So,
There's
what?
not going to be a war happening because both sides, even Vladimir Putin knows that the threat of mutual nuclear destruction is a bad idea. So
Yeah,
that's highly unlikely.
I think you're right. So let's do a little game theory. Let's see. So we got Putin over here. And let's just say USA and allies. You heard them listed off, Germany. I mean, there's a bunch of people. So what's the realistic choices if we were to set this up in a game theory framework? What would you say?
Well, what are the constraints?
Well, so right now, let's take it from the status quo from where we're at. So we got troops down in Crimea. So where we are today, there might be boardrooms like this going on. If you guys get into intelligence work or consulting for the government, you're the resident economist to come get in on strategy here. So
Wouldn't it be Russia stay or leave?
Yes, sanctions or not.
yeah, that sounds good. So stay or leave, to sanction, because we're not, I agree, I don't think we're looking at World War III. It's not to nuke them or not nuke them. I think it's, and this is the economic nuking potentially, right? So how do we go about getting our desired outcome?
Are we going to just assign utility levels based on those?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, cash, I guess, sanction-wise.
Yeah, so we could have payoffs as far as the result of staying or going, right? So we got we impose sanctions and Russia leaves. That's probably the most desired outcome. Is the threat of sanctions?
There'd be no sanctions would be the most desired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is the outcome we're looking for, right? So no sanctions and they leave. So, in order to get that outcome, what needs to be true? You know, we're not going to dive in and analyze all the numbers here, but you guys from your economics training, even in principles class, you kind of did this type of stuff. What needs to, how do we need to weight things? Or what?
The gain from not having sanctions has to be more than the gain is for them to stay in the country.
Okay, so if we could somehow come up with what is perceived to be the dominant strategy of him leaving, right? That would be an ideal setup, because then he leaves. And then it comes down to what they're talking about, which is real, is are our threats going to be credible? And at what point, how do we go about doing that? Is it an all or nothing? I mean, do we turn Russia into another Cuba? Now, on the other side of the fence, what's Putin thinking?
I'm calling their bluff.
Yeah. So he's like, I can live with the sanctions. His little payoff matrix might look a little different of what his predictions are. They say that they're going to cut me off like Cuba, but maybe they'll only impose a few tariffs on me or something, right? Maybe just some tariffs on oil.
You're gaining quite a bit of land if you look at it too. He's trying to.
Well, it depends on the
It's sort of like
resources on that
Ukraine.
land.
That's what they're claiming.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Ukrainians, by the way, that are Russian. That's part of what's making this kind of an interesting battle. I mean, I think his argument is, well, it was always ours anyway. You know, back in the good old days of the USSR, with Soviet domination, it was fairly recent that the Ukraine broke off. So
Jimmy Fallon said that he's mad at us because we beat him in hockey. I thought that was pretty funny.
Who said that one?
Jimmy Fallon, I think.
Oh, did he?
Going on news.
Yeah, they didn't do so good in
There's like a
hockey.
little tagline, "Sorry, Mr. Putin" or something like that.
I bet there'll be a lot of good things on, the late night talk on this one. So yeah, this whole idea of credibility is going to have to do it. So, do you think the Allies can use some of these international organizations to their advantage?
Potentially.
How would they go about that? I mean, what do you think they would need to do to kind of add credibility to the threat? And I know I'm not asking for the insides and outs of these organizations because I don't know them
Is there
either.
a potential way to force them out of the WTO or something?
Yeah, they could. If they can possibly use the organization to pool together, right? A little more. So it's kind of nice when we have these debates on should we have these international organizations or should we not. At least there's a mechanism in place to where we can maybe call an emergency meeting together. There's communication channels that are open between the leaders of these countries. So hopefully that can play well.
Well, the question too is on Ukraine. Like, what side of the fence do they fall on? I mean, obviously the leader they got ousted is with Putin, so it's like, you know,
Yeah.
it's Russia not Ukraine, even though Ukraine really isn't resisting, or when you know what
Well,
I'm
I
saying?
mean, Ukraine was kind of already in its own civil war before Russia started getting involved further.
Yeah, and I think the war that Putin didn't agree with was starting to win apparently, and that's
Well, because
why.
they brought up, he invaded Georgia a while, like,
Mhm.
didn't he, or something like that?
Yeah.
One of Georgia's
In
brothers.
the late '90s or something, it was kind of a similar.
And he just got slapped on the hand, but they said they didn't really, no one did anything.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know enough about the Russian culture, but you know, you see that look on Putin's face, which is no look at all, and you kind of wonder, does the guy really care too much about, you know, how much the sanctions will hurt? It's not perfectly easily to read, and if maybe he thinks, well, I'm going to just take this country, go old school 19th century. I like the way John Kerry said that. And just kind of swoop in here and claim it back. And if he thinks the other people won't want to go to war about it, then I don't know. There's some weird dynamics to it, Taylor.
Does Russia have any allies in this?
I don't think so. I haven't heard of any.
Not Japan or any of those.
Because they just said France and
Japan was number one.
I can't remember China's stance on it. I haven't heard of any supporters directly, but I don't know if they've joined the group that says this is wrong. You know, they're kind of riding that fence. But, you know, they haven't been talking about it, but if all of a sudden China says, you know, that's the way to go. I remember those days.
Yeah, that's trouble.
So if we have China, Russia teaming up,
That's kind of trouble.
all of a sudden World War III doesn't sound so far off, right? If we look at Asia, Russia and China pretty much make up this huge landmass, both of whom are heavily armed for some mass destruction.
Yeah, Chinese.
I think the media is trying not to be too alarmist about it, and I think with good reason. I really think, you know, what they're saying is, no, you know, nobody wants to get into a nuclear war situation. They're not that dumb. But at the same time, he's pushing the envelope. I mean, he's really pushing it.
Yeah.
Is he, and like the media's bringing up, is he really just playing to our weakness, knowing that we don't want that to happen, that he'll just kind of bulldoze his way? Maybe he's already committed. I mean, the game is played a little differently. If all of a sudden we start to think that he doesn't care about the sanctions, he's more about controlling his people, and you know, if the rest of the world closes the doors behind, I don't care, as long as I've got the Ukraine back. I don't know. Apparently they think they know him better, I think, but apparently not very well, because this has come as a bit of a surprise. This has all evolved in the last 4 days. I think they invaded Crimea on, it was Friday, I think, right? Late Friday, or it was breaking news then.
Well, was the whole speech at the opening ceremony of the Olympics false when he, or fake when he was talking about, you know, we welcome all the whole world to witness Russia's transcendent, you know, they were trying to talk about how Russia was growing. And it's becoming
Oh, is that
this
right?
modern-
I didn't listen to the front.
That's what the whole, like, program was about, like, when they were doing all the dances and stuff, and it started with, like, it was really rampant and
Ah,
communism and all that, and nonsense.
yeah.
I don't know what he meant.
All right. Well, keep posted. Hopefully it won't lead to anything too big, but we now know that sanctions might not be the best way.
No one chose Russia as their country, did they?
No, but yeah, that would have. I suppose if somebody wants to do it, I'd let you switch, since it's kind of a hot button. So if anybody wants to, let me know now. we haven't done any work on it yet, so. Going once, going twice. Okay. Or the Ukraine, for that matter, might be another one.
Might as well. Might be the last opportunity to do it.
Yeah. You want to do it?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's see. I want you to pull out your balance of payment sheets. Just to kind of look over those numbers. Max, let's see. Where's... Oh, where did I put yours? Set one aside with your name on it. That's what we did on Friday. So just the table, just look at those numbers and tell me if anything jumps out at you. And specifically, where is my sheet? Oh, here, different folder.
Which table?
Yeah, I want you to look at the big one on the back, 9.3, the one on the very back.
Oh, negative balance in the current account.
Yes, so there's that.
Statistical discrepancy.
Okay. So we got those three areas. Big negative. So imports and exports is the large majority of it, right? So we talked about that. Now flip it over and look at the composition of the current account only. So that's table 9.2.